We were really surprised that our cabbages did so well this year, but they did. A few bug holes never hurt anybody. We actually did end up dusting them with some 7 dust. I know that's not probably what you want to hear. It's not technically an organic thing to do, but if we wanted any cabbage at all, we had to do something. So we had one long row of cabbage, and look at this. This one I'm holding up right here was 6.5 pounds, and that was pretty much our typical size. So let's make some sautéed cabbage. This is one of our favorite recipes as a simple side dish that I make all the time. I'm going to use half a head of this 6-pound cabbage. So first you're going to melt some butter in a skillet. And when it gets good and melted, we're going to core the cabbage and just shred it up just a little bit. It don't have to be super fine. You can see there's some chunks in it. Don't worry, it'll cook down. And with that cabbage, I just fill up the skillet. I add salt, pepper, nutritional yeast, and sometimes I'll add garlic powder or onion powder, and just stir it around and get the butter coated on the cabbage. And it's going to cook for about 20 to 30 minutes. Just when it turns brown like this, it is time to serve, and boy, is it delicious. Next up is a recipe from my Aunt Jackie, my mama's sister that has passed away. It's German slaw. Your regular coleslaw will be mayonnaise based. This is just olive oil based. So we're going to shred up cabbage, of course. Then we're going to chop up an onion. Here's a red onion from the garden. And I do have this recipe on my blog. I will put the link for that in the notes. You're going to add some bell pepper, some sugar, or just another type of sweetener. And you're going to mix it all up. And then we're going to add an olive oil and vinegar dressing. Again, you can check the full recipe. I'll have the description in the notes. And not on my blog, I added feta cheese to this batch, and that made it. We're going to talk about how we made big batch kraut. First, we needed to pick some more cabbage. I needed help, so here comes Papa going to help me pick the cabbage, and the boys have their wagon ready to go. Now usually you can just pick the head of cabbage off of the big leaves, but this was so big and I wanted to save the outer leaves for some other critters, which we'll show you here in a minute. So Papa's just going to chop that stalk of cabbage with his knife. And there it is. So we ended up getting 2 more cabbages out of the cabbage patch. And this was the weekend that we were going to make some kraut, so I wanted a big bunch. And it turns out just picking them up by the roots was a lot easier than cutting them with a knife. So the last one we just picked up by the roots. And here we go. We're going to go get those big, pretty outer leaves off of the cabbage, and then take some more leaves off of the actual cabbage itself just to get rid of some of the holes where the bugs have been. But as you can see, we've got a wagon load of cabbage. Here goes the outer leaves. We're putting them in a crate, and we're going to show you in just a minute who else likes to eat cabbage. But there they are. 3 beautiful heads of cabbage. This is Virginia. She's our cow, and she really enjoyed her share of the cabbage leaves. And look who else liked the cabbage leaves.
Oh, they like it. Very cute.
I sat in on a quick class from my friend Shallon, and she instructed us on how to do all of these jars of kraut. Now, I only used 1 head of cabbage, so I had 2 left. So here's just a quick peek at what we do to make kraut. First, we're gonna have the humongous head of cabbage, and then once we have it split apart, I'm gonna core it. So to core cabbage, you just pretty much run your knife along what looks like that big chunk right there in the middle, and I'm just gonna take it out with my hand. Once you get it loosened with the knife, it comes right out. Just to make it easier to cut, I'm gonna end up splitting it again. So now it's quartered. And then I have my big old wash tub over here, and I'm gonna use this handy chopper to chop up the cabbage. This made the job a whole lot easier. There is such a thing as kraut boards and kraut choppers, but this little handy dandy chopper was perfect for the job. Now you can see in my cabbage there are a few brown leaves here and there, and I'm just going to pick those out. It's no problem at all. So I'm just going to keep on chopping until I get that wash pan there full of chopped cabbage for kraut. Alright, here's a big bunch of cabbage. And I'm just going to keep it chopping. And then once you get so much in there, it's easier to chop. The next step for kraut is to get wide mouth quart jars, and we're going to stuff kraut into the jars. Now, I'm taking the bottom of a wooden spoon, and I am gently just pressing it down. It'll continue just to crunch down, and just pack it as tightly as you can. I don't use excessive force here, but I'm just going to pack it down until I can't fit any more into the jar. Then I'm going to ladle the brine over the cabbage and just get it up to the top of the jar. We're not canning this, so we're not going to worry about the head space and all of that. And then we store it on the shelf. The last thing I'm going to show you here is how we froze the cabbage. Instead of chopping it, we're using our meat slicer to slice up the cabbage. This was just from 1 head of cabbage. It made a whole lot, let me tell you. So the next thing we're going to do, I know this is kind of hard to see, but this is our FoodSaver vacuum seal. So I put enough cabbage in the bag for a serving for us to have that sauteed cabbage, and I am going to vacuum seal the cabbage. I'm not blanching it or anything. We're just going to vacuum seal and put directly into the freezer. I have seen people successfully freeze cabbage this way. We have never done it this way. This is the first time we're doing it, so hopefully it turns out good. It will be mushy, but that's okay because it's going to get mushy when we cook it anyway. And here it is. We had a whole nice stash out of 3 more heads of cabbage.